So, should my kids come first?
I'm going to say no, and let me tell you why. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Covenant Army Marriage Podcast. We're so happy that you are checking in with us. Remember to like, share, subscribe wherever you're listening or watching. And also remember to check out the Covenant Army Marriage store where you can find all the cool Covenant Army gear. The link will be right there in the description of the podcast. We can't wait to jump into today's topic.
I know, it's going to be exciting.
Well,
It's something that we frequently hear a lot of moms say. Not too often dads, but I hear a lot of moms say it.
Say what?
And it is my kids come first. My kids are always going to be my kids. No matter who I'm in relationship with, my kids come first.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that?
Well, it's a problem, I think, for sure. I mean, I've seen a problem in my own relationships, my own marriage, and it never works out well. It always ends up causing problems. That's the best way I can say.
Well,
so that's why I say no for myself.
Now,
out of experience.
I can understand why a mom would say that, like why she would have that sentiment. I get it. Like she was probably heartbroken before, right? And now that the relationship is no more and she has her kids are never going to leave her, right? Her kids are almost like her security. Like they're not going anywhere. They're always going to love her no matter what, which is true. Kids will always love you as mom and dad, right? That never changes. But a mom stepping out there further and saying, well, my kids are always going to come first, no matter who I'm in relationship with, can potentially be problematic.
Well, you made a big point there, which I think is super important to kind of dissect this a little bit. Because I know we come off and we say either yes or no. I mean, you're going to have people on both sides of the aisle. Some people are going to be upset. Other people are going to clap and go, yay, yay, yay. But the point of the matter is, you mentioned it. We hear it mainly from moms and not so much dads.
Right.
And you said that element of security.
Mm-hmm.
And it does like touch on that main need of a wife or a woman, I should say.
Mm-hmm.
Top need of a woman is security.
Right.
To need to feel secure.
Right.
And if she's feeling insecure in a relationship or a marriage, right? One thing that she can be secure in is her children.
Right.
And in doing so, that's where the problems start to lie.
Well, and stating it that way, even when you're still married, if the marriage isn't sturdy and strong and, you guys aren't vibing on all aspects of the marriage, a woman naturally will gravitate toward her kids because she feels accepted and loved there.
Yeah.
No matter what's going on.
Yeah. Which is funny. And I know this is a little bit on the other side, but guys, if their marriage isn't going well, they typically don't gravitate toward it into the kids.
Right.
They gravitate outside the home. Typically work is usually the first place they'll go, or friends, hobbies, those kind of things. But it is interesting that moms are the ones that typically run right to their offspring, the children. And I think that, again, there's something innate inside of a woman who wants to care and protect her children. So what I want to say is like, it doesn't come from a bad place. Like a mom making that statement, she feels, and you can probably speak more to this than I can because you're a woman, like, this is coming from a good place in my heart. Like putting my kids first, it just feels right.
100%.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I was there once upon a time.
Yeah.
I was there as a single mom for a short time, but I was there. So I can understand like, well, my kid's going to come first because I don't know if you're going to leave me. Right?
Don't say that. I'm not going anywhere.
Well, no, not you. I'm talking about back then, and coming through divorce and being a single mom and having my daughter, she was priority. As your kids should be if you're a single mom, like your kids are the priority. However, if you decide that you want to venture into having a relationship, you may want to lean into learning a little bit more of what people call the blended family or the blended dynamic that starts to happen. But for a mom, there's many moms that still jump into a relationship still saying, my kids are going to be first. They're going to be first because I don't know if you're going to leave me.
Well, yeah, 100%. And that's definitely an element. But let's break it down and keep it simple.
Okay.
Let's look at first the nuclear family, and then we'll look at the blended family dynamic, that kind of what comes into play
okay,
when kids are put in first place as a priority. So let's talk about the nuclear family. And this is something that I'm familiar with in my history. As we shared before, I've had another marriage. So I've been through divorce, and my first marriage was a very kid-centered home.
Right.
Kids were at the top of the list, and they were in first place priority. Now, looking back and learning kind of the dynamics that were happening, obviously we ended up in divorce, so something wasn't right? Like, that's the evidence.
Right.
Like, if you've been through divorce, something happened to take you guys there to got you to that place. And I'm not going to say that's the only thing, but I know looking back, it's something that I learned that was out of alignment, if you will.
So what you mean is like all the decisions, all the choices and stuff that were being made in that marriage, first you thought about the kids first.
Well, a lot of the decisions that were made were kids were first of mind first.
Okay.
So a lot of the decisions would be made based on what was happening with the kids, and a lot of plans and things would take place because of the kids. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So they were the priority. That's the best way that I can explain it. So what would happen is that now that I learned that, like looking back, what would happen is that as a husband and wife, the way that God has designed marriage, it's meant where the two become one, right? And that
Husband
one
and
is,
wife.
There's nothing in between them. You see what I mean? Like that's God's design for marriage. When we had not you and I, but when I was a part of a child-centered home, it was husband, kids, wife. So there was, now not the kids are bad, but they were in between the husband and wife relationship, which prevented a deeper level of intimacy, which even something good can come between a husband and wife. It's not all just bad stuff that ends up separating a husband and wife.
Right.
And most of the time, just like us, we didn't know it was wrong.
Right.
We didn't know what it was doing because we thought it was right. We thought, like, this is what everybody tells you. This is what you're supposed to do, earthquake. Like, this is the way it's supposed to be done. Like, it's good. It's admirable to say, my kids are first. I live for my kids. Like, all those things.
You think it's the admirable thing to say.
You think it, and people are telling you this. You understand what I'm saying? Like,
well, yeah, no, I get it. I mean, when you think about, like, biblically speaking, when God created Adam and Eve, he didn't create them as children just running around loose doing their own thing. He created them as husband and wife, right? He brought them together as husband and wife, and then they had kids. What kind of chaos would we have if God just dropped a bunch of kids on earth and there was no mom, dad, husband, wife?
Well, I think you flip on the news right now and watch, and that's exactly what happens. A bunch of kids running around with no parents parenting them, and it's tongue in cheek, but that's kind of what the evidence is. It's chaos.
Right.
Chaos is happening in our culture because of a lack of parenting.
And when it happens in the home, and
it's evident out in the communities.
Well, and you'll find the evidence in your marriage because you guys won't be very connected. Like you said, the intimacy won't be there.
And, for people, and we'll dive into intimacy on another podcast. I don't want to go too far in that. But it prevents that oneness.
Right.
And again, it doesn't mean that you guys can't be good parents as far as, we're planning things, we're thinking about the kids' future and all that stuff. Like, you can still do that stuff. But the problem is it starts to throw things out of whack. And that's why I like using the term out of alignment. Like, you can drive a car that's out of alignment. Like, you can still drive it. You can get in it and go down the road and meet your destination.
Right.
However, what's happening to that car as you're driving? What's happening to your tires?
Yeah.
Right. Look at it. You see the wear and tear on your tires over time of a car being out of alignment.
Yeah.
In a marriage, when it's out of alignment with a kid-centered marriage, you will see evidence on your tires. And it's going to be your marriage that you're going to recognize it in.
Right.
And that's what a lot of people don't see. Down the road, people with a child-centered home, let's just say, now the kid's grown up and now they moved out. That's where a lot of it becomes evident. You've got people that aren't really connected. They don't relate. They're not on the same page. Now they think they're empty nesters and they both want to go their own paths. But on even more than that, what have you taught your kids in the process?
I was going to say, and the kids are also impacted by that too, because when they become adults and if they finally make it out into the world, because sometimes they want to stay home, but when they make it out into the world, they are expecting to be the center.
Well, I was going to say that's another key element that a lot of people don't think of with a kid-centered home. You make the whole world revolve around them. I mean, let's just be honest, guys. Our society is full of self-centeredness and selfishness.
Mm.
When you have a child-centered home where everything is about them, they're the world, they're the like your life revolves around them, that kid is going to have a really heightened view of self, like to the nth degree.
Well, they're entitled.
Well, entitlement, yeah, 100%. And so, again, going back to God's design in the nuclear family, it's perfect. Why? Because, like you said, I'm just going to give a quick snapshot. Who was first? God.
Right.
In a Christian home, in a Christian marriage, in a Christian family, God has to be first. No question about it.
Right.
Your home, your marriage, your family will not function if God is not first. And when I not function to the highest setting, the highest ability that God has called marriage and family to be. Now, just like the car, you can do it, but you're not going to get the full blessing of what it was designed to be with outside of God's design and plan.
Right.
So God, I know this is going to ruffle some feathers too. And this is not hierarchy as in power. This is just the way that it's
the order.
The order, right? God, the husband and wife relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because that husband and wife relationship is getting what they need from their Savior, from God Himself, which is in filling them, which enables them to love each other as they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
And in that overflow, where the kids come in that third position, and not that they're less than, but just a different position, the way God said it, gives the kids what they need.
Right.
So you got God, the husband-wife relationship, marriage, and then the children.
Right.
And then everything else.
Mm-hmm.
That's the order, the way that God designed it to function.
And here's what happens in a nuclear family when, let's just say, the wife starts putting her kids first in the marriage. The husband is starting to feel a certain type of way.
Yeah, start feeling neglected.
And rightfully so, they start to feel jealous because they're no longer in the position that God ordered it to be in.
Mm.
So they start to exhibit
behaviors,
like certain behaviors.
Well, let me just speak honestly.
Go ahead.
A husband will get angry. He'll get upset. You're going to see that he's more frustrated because a man's outside of our relationship with God, there's a deep need for a man to have a connection with his wife. There is. You can't get around it. Like a guy that's husband, like I chose my wife because I wanted to do life with you.
Right.
Like I wanted to do things together and have fun together and laugh together without anybody in between us.
Right.
And again, kids are a blessing. So I'm not saying kids are bad. What I'm saying is that there's a design that comes into play so we can be husband and wife first. We're able to be parents, and the kids are seeing a healthy reflection of that. But like you said, if it gets off whack, you're going to see symptoms.
There's going to be evidence in the marriage, 100%.
And that's where a guy typically starts working late, hanging out with his friends, picking up extra hobbies, like anything he can do to try to feel like a man, like he's wanted and needed.
Right.
And if he can't go to his wife because she's so full of taking everything of the kids on that she doesn't have any time left for him, it's going to be a problem.
Well, it also causes problems on the wife's side because then eventually she feels neglected by her husband. Well, why aren't you here with me? Why aren't you helping me with the kids? So there's so many different things that start to happen because of that pivot over to the kids that you really need to be careful of. Now, on the flip side, if there's been a divorce and now there's a single parent, I'm going to speak from a mom's perspective. There's a single mom with kids. We just came through a divorce, and now, part of her journey now in healing, sometimes if she doesn't seek healing somewhere else, she's going to attach herself to her kids, and her kids become that sort of security blanket for her.
Well, yeah, 100%. And I'd say even when you get help, sometimes it just naturally happens.
It does.
Because like you mentioned that in the beginning of the podcast, that element of security. Anybody that has gone through divorce, there's so much hurt and so much pain, and you feel insecure in just who you are as a person. That's what divorce does. It's one of the pains of divorce. And you're looking for someone to love you and hold on to you that's not going to leave you at that point. And typically, your kids are the closest thing to you.
Right.
So you, mama bear, grab your little cubs and you hold on tight to them, right? And at that point, your mindset is, I just got hurt. My kids have been hurt. I don't want them hurt anymore.
I need to protect them.
I need to protect them. I need to guard them. So now you start going to this new relationship, just like anything, a hurt. You ever seen like a hurt animal? Or especially like a cub or something with a bear? Like you even go somewhere in the vicinity and that animal loses its mind because they're so overprotective. A lot of times going into a second marriage or a blended family, you see some of this dynamic start to happen.
Yeah, because you go into it many people go into it thinking, you know what, my kids come first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because we have seen relationships where a mom will come in with that attitude, with that behavior, and the soon-to-be husband is like, I'm okay with that. I understand that. Those are your kids. I get it. Not understanding that that's going to cause issues in your intimacy, in your relationship once you're married and living under the same roof.
Well, you could do a lot of things at the beginning of a relationship. Like you have a lot of grace and mercy for each other. So like you said, and we'll speak to that because we're a blended family. You know, you come into the marriage and I know, like I wasn't stupid. I knew where you came from. And I knew that you were guarded and I knew you had a little daughter. And obviously you're going to want to protect her.
Right.
So, hey man, whatever you need to be comfortable, whatever you need to happen. But as relationships go on and we have that desire to grow closer together, and then there's this thing that's preventing us, I shouldn't say thing, this situation that is preventing us from fully leaning into each other, an awareness comes up. So then it's like, well, how do we navigate this? And number one, if you're not aware of it, you're not going to know how to talk about it.
Right.
You won't be able to talk about it. Right. And what you don't take care of, what you don't resolve in your relationship will eventually grow. That's what happens. And many times it grows because you're feeding it the wrong information. Right. And that's where bitterness and resentment usually turns into the blended family, because the dynamic starts, what happens is the gap starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's really what's on front of the surface. Like that's what we're seeing. That's what we're experiencing. And we don't know how to tackle it. And that's where people get to the place like, well, we must have made a mistake. I must have married the wrong person. You weren't being real with me at the first. And none of that is the case. It's just other things that are underlining.
We thank God for God that we learned probably about a year into our marriage. We heard about this blended family dynamic. I had never heard of the blended family before.
No. I mean, I heard of a step family, but I never heard of a blended family.
But I'd never even been amongst that. And when we got married, I remember us kind of feeling a little bit of the tension of, you know, the blended family. And we're like, we're going to need help. Let's find help so we can do this right. Because we came out of divorce and we told each other divorce isn't an option. And when you start to feel a little bit of the strain, it wasn't a lot. It was just like, how do we do this right? I think was the mindset. We weren't getting at each other. We weren't fighting. It was just, how do we do this right? Because we've never done this before.
Well, one of the big things that we took away from that class that we learned very early on, how we talked about earlier in the podcast about being out of alignment. We were out of alignment. We didn't know we were out of alignment until someone, I know you got more to say, until like we saw the evidence, like we talked about, we shared earlier with God's design, like it's God, marriage, kids, everything else.
When we learned that early before we were out of alignment, that's what I was trying to say. Like we weren't fighting. We weren't getting at each other, but there was definitely
there was stuff that hadn't floated to the surface because we were still young in our relationship.
Right. There was moments that we were like, how do we do this?
But once God showed us that truth, right? And this is the kicker. And I don't know if a lot of people talk about this. It's going to sound pretty straight, but listen, in the blended family, the enemy does a great job of disguising this. God's design for the marriage does not change if you're in a nuclear or a blended family.
Right.
It's the same design. The same design he has for marriage in the nuclear family is the same design he has in the blended family. So even though we have extra dynamics in the blended family, the design has to be the same.
It doesn't change.
Marriage, kids, everything else. And that's really difficult for the blended family because of the hurts.
But if you don't learn how to do it and how to put your blended family in God's order, that's where you start to experience some of the hurts and pains. And there's a way to do it. And I was happy because after that first year of us being married and starting to feel some of the, okay, how do we do this? How do we navigate this area? I remember praying about it. Like after that second year that we started going to church.
Well, we were in quick snapshot. We were in a unique situation.
Right.
So we met roughly a year later, we got married. Within that next year, I ended up getting deployed overseas and then I came back.
So it was in our third year.
Roughly
going
but it felt
into
like
our
the second year because that mid-year was an odd year because
you were gone.
I was on long-term vacation.
He was gone. Vacation. Well, I wouldn't call that a vacation. But once you got back and we started going to church, I remember praying like, God,
well, we needed it. Yeah.
Can you show us something, give us something to help us grow in our blended family the right way? Because we want to honor you.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, that weekend there was a little ad in
Bulletin.
the bulletin for church for a blended family group, and I was like, babe, we need to go to this. Let's go. And God took over.
Yeah. So I mean, and in that class, that's where we started learning like why it's not good. And through that class, that's where I learned that a child-centered home all around doesn't work.
Right.
Because we would talk with other couples and we talk about the dynamics. Well, what's the dynamic of your family and your marriage, and what's this look like? And every family that where it was child-centered had issues.
Right.
And it didn't matter if it was blended or nuclear, because we talked to all kinds of couples. And we're like, this is really interesting that nobody talks about having a child-centered marriage doesn't work. And even to this day, guys, this is 2025. And, we share a lot of stuff on social media. We see a lot of comments and a lot of things. And thank you guys for everyone that comments. Even if you don't agree with us, thank you for your comments, because we like the feedback. Right. We like the interactions. Everything on social media is about sparking the conversation to dive deeper into truth. Right? That's what we pray, that you see something that leads you to truth, God's truth, not our truth, right? God's truth that can help lead you to freedom. And this particular topic with having a child-centered home and now being a believer and understanding that God has a design for it and a plan that works.
Right.
But guess what, guys? You have to die to self. Like, I'm going to say either a mom or a dad. I know typically it's the moms that have a hard time doing this. This is God's design and plan. And it may be hard for you to hear this, but it's the truth. And how do you get there? With God's help.
Well, I just want to say, moms out there, your kids are always going to be your kids. That's the truth. They will always be your kids. And there is a way for you to protect them, cover them, and still be one in your marriage with your husband and keep the order that God gave us. There is a way to do it. So I just wanted to put that out there, because it's not like you're pushing your kids to the side for your relationship, because that's not right either.
Well, let's just nail it all the way home. Right? The best thing that you can do for your children, if you truly love your kids and you want to do what's best for them, give them a healthy marriage. Give them a healthy family. Show them the way marriage is supposed to look by God's design.